Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of M&A Empowerment. I am your host, Kelsey Thomas, and this week I have with me Kathleen Hughes, who is a director at Kroll. Welcome, Kathleen, and if you could just take a second to introduce yourself and your firm to our audience.
Thanks, Kelsey. Hi, my name is Kathleen Hughes. I'm a director in the M&A group at Kroll, formerly known as Duff and Phelps. And I'm out of our Chicago office. We're an investment bank and financial advisory firm.
Great. And if you could give us a little bit about your role in the M&A process for our viewers.
Sure. So I work with privately owned companies and private equity owned companies on mostly sell side engagements. We do some buy side work, but a majority of it is the sell side. The way that we work with our firm is the transaction team that is staffed from the outset of our conversations with prospective clients, the pitch phase, is the same team that they'll see throughout the transaction. So I think that's important to know because you really get a taste of the team through the pitch process. And there's kind of
Mhm.
no bait and switch after you've signed an engagement with them. That will be the team that will work throughout the entire transaction process. And the way it works is so in your pitch phase is when you're talking with a company about a prospective sale of some sort. It could be a majority sale, it could be a minority recap. But through the pitch phase, what we do is we talk about, first of all, who the firm is, and relevant qualifications that we have in that industry and type of a transaction. From there, what we do is we talk about how we would position the company, right? So we sort of illustrate that we understand the company's strengths, the industry, the market trends. We illustrate sort of what a prospective buyer universe might look like in a transaction. And then we also provide a preliminary valuation of where we think the company, kind of a range of where the company would be valued in the market based on kind of current market conditions. Obviously, things can change. Performance of a company can change. Macroeconomic factors can change. Capital markets can change. But based on where we are at that point in time, how we would position the company's valuation. We're also one of the largest valuation firms, so we have a lot of proprietary data to sort of back up our benchmark analysis from an evaluation front. Um, then from there, the team. I should back up and also say, on within the transaction team, we always have those staffed with a managing director, a director, a VP, and then numerous analysts and associates. And I think that's important to highlight because you want to make sure that you've got your senior people involved from start to finish on a transaction. And so
Sure.
almost every interaction with the client, the managing director, the director, and the VP are involved in all those interactions. Um, so hopefully after the pitch phase, we've gotten the engagement. And from there, what we do with the process is we do a really deep dive to understand the business. And in doing that, we start to kind of prepare our marketing materials. So our marketing materials is what we put out to prospective buyer universe. And through that, we really get to know and understand the company. And it's almost sort of a further deep dive than we did in the pitch phase. But it's really highlighting the strengths of the company and kind of what the opportunity might be for a prospective buyer. Um, we we have extensive relationships with the middle market private equity firms. So for in the instance where it will make the most sense to have a broad auction, we can cast a really wide net to prospective buyers. And we have the staff and the scale to be able to manage, casting that wide net and getting in front of the right people that might be interested, as well as having the bandwidth for negotiation for a large list of prospective buyers. After that, we move to the IOI phase, so indications of interest, where we're accepting kind of preliminary bids, and we take those and move to the kind of the next marketing phase in which we narrow down those bids to the number can vary, but maybe a handful of prospective buyers that we then give direct access to management. We open up the data rooms to those prospective buyers, and from there, they're really doing a deep dive themselves on the diligence. And hopefully from there we narrow it down to one prospective buyer, sometimes two, but that we then go through the negotiation and closing of the transaction with. So that's really kind of a high level start to finish, how we are involved in a transaction.
Gotcha. That's super, super helpful, especially, for some of our viewers who might not be familiar with kind of the phases of the process. And that really will kind of help draw together some of the other guests we've had in the show. I kind of like to think of you guys as the architects. You're kind of bringing everybody together and, making everything make sense with all the different players and whatnot. So appreciate that
Yep.
overview.
One other thing just to add to that, Kelsey, is that we, about half of the sell side work we do is with privately owned companies and the other half private equity owned. So I think that we are very well versed in the instance of a private equity or privately owned company that's never been through a transaction. We know what they don't know, and we know the things that we need to explain. Whereas with a private equity firm, they buy and sell companies all day long. But a privately owned company,
Sure.
it's we don't take for granted that they know what the SIM is or the confidential information memorandum. That's the marketing piece. We make sure we walk them through and really educate them on every step of the process.
Gotcha. Right. So depending on the specific seller, you'll be able to tailor the engagement and how you work with them, based on their experiences.
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. So with that, could you describe a recent professional success?
Sure. So there's a lot of confidentiality around our transactions. So while I
Sure.
can't give some specifics, there's been two nice wins or engagements since the start of the year. And when I look at both of them involved really significant collaboration with folks within our firm. And I say that because, I think that a lot of times people can be hesitant to collaborate because they might want to get sole credit for something or look like they were the only ones that were involved in the deal and winning it. But really, where what I think our firm does really well is collaborate with each other to win something. And you would rather win a transaction and have used other people within the firm than risk not winning the transaction because you didn't collaborate with others that might have been valuable to the process. And so we've had two really nice engagements recently, both of which involved really pulling in anyone that I identified might be valuable to winning the transaction, whether that was relationships they may have had with people involved in the deals prior, or other advisors that were known to the company, or people that were knowledgeable in a specific industry that the transaction involved. So I really think that I think it's something to always keep in mind as you look at future potential opportunities of how can I best position the firm to win this piece of business, and who might have knowledge or experience that could be of value into winning it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on those collaborative efforts. So, I guess lastly, what would you say to other women that are either currently in the M&A space and doing what you do, or maybe kind of moving up through the ranks, or those that might be interested in doing what you do? What would you
Mhm.
tell them? What advice would you give them?
So a couple of things. I think if you're looking at getting into the M&A field, and maybe to the females out there that are still in school, I would recommend really tapping into your alumni network. I think that we're always willing, I think, to talk and give guidance. And I've been very honestly I've had alumni reach out both from my college as well as my high school, and I've been very impressed just with their courage to reach out. So I think that I would encourage people to not only reach out but also be persistent in your outreach. You might have to ping someone two or three times to get their attention. We get a zillion emails a day, and lives, our worlds are busy, but be persistent in outreach. I think the second thing that is really important, whether you're looking to get into the M&A world or you're starting out in the M&A universe, I think it's really important to understand how women work compared to men. There are physiological differences with how men are wired and how women are wired. And I think just having an understanding of that will tee women up to be more successful. I always highlight the fact that, men are typically compensated more than women, but also women are notoriously poor at negotiating salaries and pushing for, better bonuses or promotions or better starting salaries. So I think just being aware of those things will really position women to be successful. And I think the last thing is, in its advice to women that are already in the M&A world, is look out for the women that are up and coming, and take time um, to interact with them, to connect with them, and to stay in touch with them. It is a small world. It's there's there's not a lot of women in investment banking and private equity. But I was in New York last week. I had a bunch of meetings with private equity firms, and there's probably more women at those meetings than there typically are. But I was just so impressed with uh, how smart they are, how ambitious they are, and successful. And you can really make that connection. And I think it can be really meaningful to these women that are, maybe in the first 10 years of their career. What's fun is it being a small world. I'll meet someone, in that universe, and then I'll see them 7 times in the next year. So I think it's important to keep up those connections that you make, and make introductions or anything that might be helpful to that. I think women supporting other women is important, and it's not just in business, but in life and everything you do. I was I was getting dressed today and thinking about having this, and I have a friend that has a clothing line, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna wear her shirt. She has a golf clothing line, and this is actually a golf shirt that last summer I told her I realized can go under a blazer, and plenty of the men wear golf shirts to work. Why not women? Ellie Day is her clothing line. So I just think there's ways in work and outside of work that we can support other women, and you just have to keep it top of mind.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I completely agree with you. I mean, people that I've met at one event and then I've stayed in touch with, but it might not always be specific to the M&A world. You have to bring up those below us and those, our peers, and just kind of keep in touch, stay in touch and support each other. So I really
Yep.
appreciate the advice, appreciate the time today, Kathleen. And again, this is Kathleen Hughes, who is a director at Krull. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of M&A Empowerment. Looking forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, Kelsey.